I would like to say a couple of words before we start the short briefing. Let's start with Geneva talks. Everybody is interested in those talks because this is the only format where Georgian and Russian diplomacy are facing each other. We had the 15th round in March. The 16th round is going to be held in June. I wouldn't say there are some substantive breakthroughs in first or second working groups. First group being dedicated to security and stability. Second group being dedicated to questions of the IDPs, refugees, and other humanitarian questions. Russia is not prepared to talk about core issues, about our core divergences. First 15 round, they've been claiming that the obstacle to substantial discussions is absence of Georgia's pledge not to use the force to restore the territorial integrity. Our government carefully prepared the legal obligation, which my president has undertaken on November 23rd while speaking to the European Parliament. And then this legal obligation has been confirmed in respective letters to Secretary General of the United Nations, OSCE, to Speaker of the European Parliament, to President of the European Union, and to the United States President as to the leader of the country, who is part of the Geneva talks. I think it was something very unexpected for Russians, and Geneva talks has been stalled quite seriously. Let's see what's going to happen on the 16th of June. Situation has not changed. No safe, dignified, and voluntary return of refugees. 10% of our population are IDPs and refugees. 20% of territory is occupied by Russia. And there is a hysterical campaign of militarization of those occupied territories. Since Georgia's president has undertaken the legal obligation never to recur to force to restore the territorial integrity, Russians have introduced incredibly dangerous modern assault weapons to the occupied territories, to name few of them. Hurricanes, Smerch, this is operational tactical missiles with range from 50 to 90 kilometers. S-300, which is quite advanced anti-aerial system, and it's very difficult to contemplate about whom actually S-300s are taken into Abkhazia for. And the last dangerous step, provocative step, was to take 2 battalions of .U, by NATO classification, it's Karab-M, operational tactical missiles, which can be equipped with multiple cluster warhead or nuclear warhead. And the range of those operational tactical missiles are something between from 90 to 120 kilometers. Human rights abuse, ban on teaching Georgian history, Georgian language in the schools of the occupied territory. That's a normal daily practice. Unlawful seizure of the property and creation of GDR-style state border is something we're witnessing right now. So the situation, unfortunately, is quite very tense, and there is nothing to rejoice about. We remain engaged in Geneva talks in a good faith. We will try our best to reach some kind of breakthrough there. We are prepared to talk to Russians anytime, any place without preconditions. And it shall be clearly understood that this status quo is not sustainable and is not going to be tolerated neither by Georgia nor by the international community. We know that several, I would say more than several, legislative bodies of the European countries have adopted special resolutions where Russia's presence, unlawful, illegal presence on Georgia's territory, is quite correctly defined as occupation, and this is just beginning of the process. I will stop here. I think you are quite very well informed what's going on in our part of the world, and wait for your questions. Yes.
Sure. I wanted to ask. You mentioned the Geneva talks. I've been trying to cover here. There was some back and forth about how these the UN's participation will be funded. Are you up to? There was some. The DPKO was trying to get a letter from the Security Council. Where does it stand? Yeah, where does that stand now? Is it a trust fund, or is the UN itself going to fund it?
When we just started discussing this problem 8 months ago, Georgia knew that the problem is coming, and we've been trying to sit down, everybody, all parties involved in this business, and start meaningful conversation about how to finance Ambassador Turonen's team. We have proposed several decisions. First decision was absolutely non-political one, to create a trust fund. And actually our friends and allies pledged nearly the whole sum necessary for Ambassador Turonen's team to function in a normal way. Second was to go to Secretary General, to Secretariat, and to ask to prolong this extraordinary funding of Mr. Turonen's team. The third was to find and to designate some kind of secretariat jobs while we are trying to solve this catch-22. Unfortunately, nothing did work out because a trust fund was absolutely 100% blocked by Russians. Secretariat said that they are having problem with prolonging extraordinary funding, though they kindly prolonged it for 1 month. I still have to have a confirmation. We don't have final confirmation yet, but there is some kind of preliminary information that they plan to prolong it until April 30, which is good. It gives us at least some room for maneuver. And the fifth committee is absolutely out of question because Russia is refusing to accept a simple thing, host country consent. I mean, Ambassador Turonen's team cannot be placed in the moon or in a geographically unknown place. And if there is a geographically known place, then that geographically known place, being a sovereign state, shall express one's consent, which already was done in 2009. And the Secretary General's report shall reflect the exchange of letters. Basically, that's where we are. We will try our best to persuade Russians that trust fund has no danger to any of the participants of Geneva talks. It's not going to be politicized. There is no problem or suspicion when it comes to objectivity and unbiasedness of the group of Ambassador Turonen or him personally.
By April 30th, does something have to be worked out, or what happens then with Turonen's work?
It stops to exist. And other people, my guess is that from DPKO will be start coming to Geneva talks to substitute that team. The only problem is that we are losing. We do not have clear understanding what kind of participation there will be when it comes to the United Nations within incident response and prevention mechanisms. This is what worries us a lot. And it's like UNOMIC. It is the same thing. Georgia wants as much international presence as possible. So until April 30th, or God willing it's prolonged, we will work tirelessly to retain the team. Thank you. No more questions.
I'm sorry, I was coming here from the Security Council, but there was this ruling yesterday by the International Court of Justice on the CERD, racial discrimination, ethnic cleansing complaint. What do you make of it that they supposedly based the ruling on there not being negotiations?
Allow me to say that I'm tremendously disappointed. I'm very disappointed. because my impression as of the lawyer, I'm not speaking right now as the minister, but as the lawyer, the court tried to find some kind of excuse not to consider the case. I mean, Russia and Georgia have been engaged in bilateral and multilateral talks since 1991, when Russia started undeclared war against my country. And to cite this reason, absence of bilateral talks, as something IJC doesn't want to consider Georgia's case for, is absolutely, totally ridiculous. And, this is a wonderful example, this decision, and this decision why we are living in the world we are living. And Russia being the permanent member of the Security Council is another good demonstration, example, why we live in the world we live, when they have been selling or granting arms to such a, I can't even call him political figure, somebody like Gaddafi, and now those weapons are killing civilians in Libya, and the international community has to take an action. Are there any other questions?
That's one more, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, and it's because obviously you're talking about refugees in one part, but there's been this ongoing. I think even the UN system has talked about people facing eviction or in Tbilisi itself. Do you know about this case? UNHCR has raised the alarm a couple of times.
I understand what there were some very speculative, ungrounded, and ill-informed reports in some of the, I would say, minor Western editions. Nobody was evicted. There were you're absolutely right. There were some kind of rallies and demonstrations of the groups of IDPs and refugees who were not happy with the amount of compensation the government was planning to pay for the property they've been living in since 1993. But the problem was sorted out because, and not because mass media interfered, but because NGOs and human rights organizations appealed ministry on refugees and IDPs. The whole process was stopped. The negotiating process was started, and eventually everybody reached an agreement. But you understand, when you are taking a person from very expensive but destroyed property in the center of Tbilisi, sometimes they would like to have more compensation. But everything was, by the way, evaluated on a market, based upon the market calculations. So, can I go for coffee now? No more questions. Good. Thank you.